الشهادتين طلبة هنيئة لا نظمأ بعدها أبدا يا رب العالمين. اللهم آمين آمين آمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. If you need to finish your conversations, please do outside the mosque. We have in our lesson now, so do not disturb the lecture. Jazakumullahu khair. Tonight, inshallah, we'll talk about the translation of the Quran. And I have to highlight, if you open the books of Quran, the classical books, you don't find this field, you don't find this chapter that talking about the translation of the Quran. It's recent. In ULUMU Quran, we tend to add these because it's a phenomenon that we witness these across the Muslim world and across the globe, especially from the last century. So there is a need to include these and to talk about the translation of the Quran. And we will have another 2 lectures about the Western approach to the Quran in 2 lectures. And then we will conclude, inshallah, these series will finish by the 20th of July. We will resume, inshallah, in September. So the translation of the Quran, I mean, the first thing we need to highlight, it is an old discussion going back to the time of the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum, and going back to the time of the successors, when the Islamic Empire started getting bigger and bigger, and there was a need for the translation itself. And to clarify one thing, people, they sometimes, we mentioned this before, they highlight that we cannot say the translation of the Quran, we have to say the translation of the meaning of the Quran. ترجمة معاني القرآن, not ترجمة القرآن. And in fact, it doesn't make much difference, honestly, because they said the argument is this: you cannot translate the Quran. You translate only the meaning of the Quran. However, translation is interpretation. It is tafsir. It is tafsir. At the end, it's tafsir. And you find in the books of the tafsir, saying it's tafsir al-Quran. You don't say tafsir ma'ani al-Quran. You say tafsir al-Quran, in Kathir, tafsir al-Quran. That's the same thing for tarjama. And we don't get the meanings of al-Quran are infinite. Because this is kalamullah. And kalamullah is infinite. Yeah? We said in every generation, you find scholars and mufassirun, they come up with completely new interpretation, new meaning, new insight because of this aspect of the Quran. Yeah. So whether you say ترجمة معاني القرآن, translation of the meaning of the Quran, or you say ترجمة القرآن, it's same. It doesn't affect your creed, it doesn't affect your iman. Well, it's just a discussion between scholars, so it's up to you how to say it. So here we have our scholars recorded certain fatwas going back to the successors, asking them about the permissibility, whether it's halal or haram to translate the Quran. And in fact, we have one of the questions that came to Abu Hanifa, radiallahu anhu, the great Imam. Someone asked him if I can read, because he couldn't speak Arabic, he spoke Persian, that Farsi, that person, and he converted, he accepted Islam at the time. Can I read the Quran in Persian at the Salah? And the answer, as recorded in the Hanafi books of Abu Hanifa, said if you can do it that for the first time, the first hour, you cannot read the Quran. You can do this, yeah, but you have to. You take the Shahada now, and now is the Maghrib, just a moment before the Maghrib. You don't know, of course, completely new for you. You don't know. You take any non-Arab speaker, taking Shahada now, just a few moments before the Maghrib, and he has to join the Maghrib, doing to do ghusl and join the Maghrib Salah. They cannot do it. Abu Hanifa said that's an exception. Yeah, he can read it in translation. But he said, in the general rule, no. You have to read it in Arabic. So that was the oldest fatwa referring to the translation of the Quran. But according to some narratives and according some riwayats, from the early Muslim community, the first one who translated the Quran was a Sahabi, was a companion. And do you know him? Huh? No, he doesn't need to translate. Huh? No, he doesn't need to. Abdullah was an Arab, he was a Qurayshi. Why he needs to translate? Can you guess someone who's not Arab? Salman al-Farisi, exactly. Because we have Bilal al-Habashi, can't be Bilal, because he's from Abyssinia, from Habasha. He can't be Suhaib, he's from Rome. And he can't be Salman al-Farisi, and he's Salman, Sayyidina Salman. And who's got actually high esteem in the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, to the extent the Prophet ﷺ said, Salmanu minna Ahl al-Bayt. Salmanu minna. Salman is from Ahl al-Bayt. We're talking about Ali, Fatima, Al-Hassan, Al-Hussein. The Prophet ﷺ included Salman. And I'm urging you to read the story of Sayyidina Salman and how he became Muslim. So he was the first one who translated Al-Fatiha. He did translate Al-Fatiha into the language of his people, which is Farsi, the Persian language. According to Ibn Hisham, this is around 628, which is the Gregorian calendar. And in the story, according to Ibn Hisham, in his seerah, when the Prophet ﷺ sent his messengers, his diplomats, to the kings around the world, to Al-Habasha, Abyssinia, to Egypt, to Bahrain, to asking them to accept Islam, to embrace Islam, and to teach them about the Quran. According to Ibn Hisham, those messengers, they did translate some of the verses into these languages of the Coptic and the Roman. And also, when the Muslims, the first generation, when they migrated to Al-Habasha, to Abyssinia, and to Abraha, and you know the famous story where Ja'far, Sayyidina Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, recited the beginning of Surah Maryam to the king. Some of the Muslims, according to Hisham, some of the Muslims translated this. So Ja'far was reciting in Arabic. Well, we don't know that whether he learned this language, but according to Hisham, he recited in Arabic. But there was someone from the Muslim community who translated this to the king, Najashi, and his cabinet, his council, the scholars. And it is recorded in the Quran. ترى أعينهم تفيض من الدمع مما عرفوا من الحق يقولون ربنا آمنا واكتبنا مع الشهيدين. So that was the first occasion where the Quran has been translated into other languages. So it's from the early stages of Islam we witness the movement of translation of the Quran to other languages. And of course, that's only certain verses, certain surahs. After that, the first complete translation. So again, and it happened through the centuries that we do have many occasions where scholars, fuqaha, they did translate part of the Quran, some surah, some juz, to other languages around the globe. But the first completed translation, it was actually Persian language, Persian translation, by the great Indian scholar, Shah Wali Allah Dahlawi, or Delhi. Shah Wali Allah Dahlawi. He died in around 1762, I think. So it's late, around that 17, I think 60. He wrote ترجمة رحمه الله فتح الرحمن في ترجمة القرآن. فتح الرحمن في ترجمة القرآن. So that was the first completed translation. He is one of the most influential ulama in the subcontinent. Shah Wali Allah. He's a great scholar, muhaddith. One of his famous books, Hujjatullah al-Baligha, in 2 volumes on maqasid Sharia, on the objectives of Sharia. It was such a great mind who actually influenced generations of scholars after him. So that Shah Wali Allah Dahlawi. This is from Delhi. And I said this, from time to time, the colonial powers actually, they corrupted the names of the Muslim cities. It's like Delhi, D-E-L-H-I, it actually was Delhi, D-E-H-L-I. So the affiliation to the place in Arabic, you see, Ad-Dahlawi. If you take the contemporary pronunciation, will be, because you are from Delhi, so you'll be Dahlawi. But because it's from Dahli, so we say Dahlawi. It's like you have Salat. It's actually Sahlat in Arabic. So it's S-E-H-L-E-T. This is how we recorded this in our books, in Muslim heritage. So anyone who is from Salat, he will be Sahlati, not Salhati. So, and the Europeans, these colonial powers, they did a lot. They corrupted. They said Timbuktu. It is not Timbuktu, it's Timbuktu. And anyone from Timbuktu, when now people they say Timbuktu, yeah, it's not Timbuktu, it's Timbuktu. It's the name of the women who established this. So anyone who is from there, so we say Timbuktu, Ahmed Ali Baba Timbuktu. And again, so it's for us, it's not, if you read our heritage, you don't find Timbuktu, but you find Timbuktu. There is no U. And you have many cities in the Arab and the Muslim world. They completely corrupt the pronunciation. and we have to decolonize this. Yeah? So if you are from Delhi, say I'm from Delhi, going back to your origins. That's a footnote, yeah. Huh? Yeah, in India, that's the New Delhi. Yeah, New Delhi. It was one of the great cities of knowledge. Yeah, and you will find many scholars with this affiliation, Al-Dahlawi, someone from Delhi. So this is Shah Wali Allah Al-Dahlawi. He wrote his version, and he inspired a lot of word translations done later on in subcontinent, in Urdu, and even in Turkish. Yeah, rahimahullah. So during the 18th and 19th centuries, we witnessed a shift from the Muslim world to the European countries, and Christian missions, of course, they embarked in the Muslim world in force, and European and American, later on, scholars and missionaries, they played an important role in this field, which is translating the Quran, because for them, they had to do this to understand the religion, the teaching of Islam. And this is actually started well before, especially in Spain. Yeah, it started in Spain, where the Spanish, when they started what they call the Reconquista, taking back the Muslim cities. And unfortunately, at that time, some of the Muslims, they left Islam and became Christians. And because of their knowledge of Arabic, so they started translating some of these, some verses, some surahs, helping these Christians to criticize the Islamic teaching. So it's mainly within the context of debating Muslims and proving that Islam is wrong, not true, and start working on the Quran. Can we find mistakes in the Quran? Are there any problems? Are there any contradictions in the Quran? By doing this translation, and we have one of the records early to one of the priests in Cordoba, out of his arrogance, while he was very happy that he found a mistake in the Quran. And he consulted one of those who left Islam. He was from Malaga. And he told him that I found a mistake in the Quran. And the guy actually is Christian now, because he left Islam. But he said, I was reading Quran for all my life. I cannot, but maybe because I was Muslim, so I did not read the Quran from this perspective. So what is it? In Surah Maryam, Ya Ukhta Harun, ma kana abuki imra'a saw'in, wa ma kanat ummuki baghiya. So you said, how can be Maryam is the sister of Harun? And the guy was nothing. He said, this is in Arabic language, because attributing, you say to your uncle, my father, and that's the speech in Arabic. This is not a mistake. This is how the language works. And he said, don't say this to anyone, otherwise they will laugh at you, because this is not right. So we have this record. How do we know about this? It's by one of the great scholars, Nasiruddin, who was actually from Cordoba, and because of this what the Christians, what the Spanish did for Muslims. He claimed that he's Christian, but he wasn't. He was a Muslim. And he managed actually to run from the Christians. And he wrote a famous book, Nasiruddin ala al-Qawm al-Sharafin. A very famous book has been translated. So he quoted these anecdotes. He quoted this hikayah in his book. So it started well before, but not as completed translation. So we witnessed this with the colonial powers, with these Europeans, when they started invading colonizing the Muslim world. And they came with these scholars and missionaries, and one of the first job for this, make sure to translate the Quran for us. They did not only translate the Quran, by the way. They translated books of fiqh, books of aqidah, to understand the Muslim communities, Muslim societies, in every way. So if they, for example, in Algeria, in Morocco, when the French they invaded, they translated the main Maliki, the main fiqh books, which is the Maliki one. They translated it into French. Early, Algeria was invaded in 1830, and the first translation was completed in 1845. The main book in fiqh, in Maliki fiqh, Sheikh Khalil, they translated this. They translated Risala in Quran. They did same thing, the British, they did same thing in India. They translated the main books in Hanafi fiqh. They did the same thing in Nigeria when one of the most famous books in Aqidah was Sanusi's. And these missionaries, they translated these into English, and they translated them into African languages. So it's not only the Quran, but it was actually within a colonial project to try to decoding the Muslim societies all over the globe. So we need to understand how these people think, why these people were the best during the last 10 centuries, while they were the leaders. How? We need to understand this Quran. So they started translating this. Within the debates when Napoleon, when he invaded Cairo, his scholars translated some of the verses and some of the surahs into French to be able, and he went actually to the extreme to wear a turban and aba'a, Napoleon, and he went to the Azhar, so on. One of the good works has been done of this, just to give you an overview. One Turkish scholar, he tried to survey, to go over all these translations. So what he found actually, the work is called in English, The World Bibliography of Translations of the Meaning of the Holy Quran. It was actually in 1986. Yeah? So the World Bibliography of Translations of the Meanings of the Holy Quran. So according to this study, he actually surveyed 65 languages between the years of 1515, so 1515, to 1980, so 4 centuries. He listed 551 complete. So through these centuries, all over the world, we have 551 completed translations to different languages, and 883 partial translations. So you may have translation of the Baqarah, translation of the 1/4 of the Quran, half of the Quran, 883. And the total, he said, I mean, all these works in all these 65 languages is 2,672 editions. It's quite a lot. Yeah. Some of them, we don't know much about them. Yeah. You may have a translation in one language that is spoken only by 2,000 people, and we don't know about this. Yeah. So that's a good study on this. As we said, the Persian translations are the oldest and numerous in this category. The oldest dated version is done, it can be traced back to 350 of Hijrah. That's the first translation. Yeah. Not, of course, Salman al-Farisi, but part of this done by a Persian one called Abu Salih Mansur ibn Nur. So he did a Persian translation. We can talk also about Turkish translation. And why Turkish translation? Because the Ottoman Empire actually is the longest leading dynasty through the Islamic history. So we have the Abbasid, first in the Umayyads, will last only for nearly a century, and then the Abbasid for over 4 centuries, but later on the Ottomans, the Ottomans about 6 centuries, till 1924, officially. The Caliphate institution had been abolished by Atatürk in 1924. So we do have quite a lot of translation from the Turkish scholars. And Turkish, they were very well known on this beautifying the Quran. When a Turkish writes a copy of the Quran, it's the best in terms of, we do have some copies that is the whole of the Quran is written by gold, the ink from gold. Preserved now in Topkapi, in Istanbul. We have one in Konya, one of the oldest cities. So they are very well known and they're experts in calligraphy. Now, if you want to learn calligraphy, the best calligraphers are Turkish, not Arabs, not Persian, not the best ones for centuries are the Turkish calligraphers. So very, very well known. And now, if you go to even online, if you go to the Topkapi Palace, you can see some of these copies done to the sultans and the caliphs of the Ottoman empires. We don't have much time and we cannot elaborate this whole field again, but let's shift, say, to the modern translation. So the first, I mean, we said the main reason why these people, why the Westerns actually started translating the Quran, it's colonialism, nothing else. It's not because they love to read, they want to discover more about Islam, they want to teach others about the Quran. No. It's just to serve the colonial power. So you have, like you'll be maybe surprised that it's like this East Indian Company, of this government, the British government, when they established the East Indian Company to control all the trade and business in subcontinents, in East Africa, and it actually paved the way for the British to get inside. Yeah? So it's very well known. And they established, for example, this University of London School of African and Oriental Studies as Oriental institution to train people in the administration so they can appoint them as maybe high commissioners, those who ministers. So they advise the British government on how to manipulate these Muslim societies. 1939 witnessed also a rise in translation, especially after the First World War. The British, they worked on translation on Quran to Swahili in 1923. So they facilitate this and they appoint someone to do this again to teach the people who speak Swahili and they cannot understand Arabic. One in Turkish done, 1926. The Malay in 1938. If we'll go in and shift to, before that, also the British facilitates a translation for the Hausa done by one great Nigerian translator. His name is MAHAMMED died recently, not recently, 92. Yeah, but he did actually a good translation into the Hausa. And also, later on, we will witness, and I don't want to get to this debate, we will witness a translation against translation. So if we look back to the first translation, English, the main one, which actually was accepted and was dominant for the English speakers, was the translation of Yusuf Ali. Yeah. And Yusuf Ali, he was actually from the Buha community, the Ismaili. He was not Sunni, he was not even Shia, he was from the Buha. I'm not sure if you know the Buha, it's a sect of Ismaili Shias. And to be honest, he did not include much of his doctrine on the translation. The translation was merely academic. But you can find some of his opinion there. But this one would actually dominate the English speaking world for decades. Yusuf Ali was, and this guy actually was here in London, and he died as homeless. They found him on stairs in one of the buildings in South London, and they took him to one of the hospitals. He was actually dead. They found him dead. And later on, some people recognized him. This is Yusuf Ali, the most. That's the one who translated the Quran. Yeah. So later on, there was a need to produce a new translation which may refute some of the opinions of this translation, which may be influenced by certain Shi'i or Ismaili Buha thoughts. So we have to get rid of these and to bring a new translation. And also this works quite in West Africa, in East Africa, where someone who's Sufi may translate the Quran, and you find a Salafi make another translation to refute him. That's later on in the 80s. And again, we don't want to get to this debate, but just to give you an overview of this for the translation of the Quran. So in the English speaking, Yusuf Ali was the most famous one. And there was another translation done by a professor of Arabic in Cambridge, who was one of the great professors, Albry. His name is Albry. It's very well known. Arbery, Albry. Very well known. Then we do have another translation done by Muhammad Asad. We said a lot of things about Muhammad Asad. We said Muhammad Asad, he was, let me just get, when he did this. So Muhammad Asad, as we said before, he comes from a very well-known Jewish family. He himself from Austria, and he accepted Islam at the early age, 17 years old. And again, he wrote a book, we mentioned this before, The Road to Mecca. The Road to Mecca. And he told us in his story and how he accepted Islam. Such a beautiful story, about 300 pages, amazing. And he became the first advisor of King Abdulaziz ibn Saud when Abdulaziz ibn Saud he established Saudi Arabia. He was his first advisor, and he worked for him for 5 years. He was also, they sent him the Sanusiya movement. They sent him to Umar al-Mukhtar. You know the story of Umar al-Mukhtar, who fought the Italians in Libya. And he was sent by King Abdulaziz at the time, to ask Umar al-Mukhtar to move to Egypt. And he managed to cross all these countries, and he managed to get into Umar al-Mukhtar, rahimahullah. But unfortunately, Umar al-Mukhtar at that time was the last stage, and he said, I cannot surrender, I cannot move outside Libya, I have to stay here, I have to fight. And rahimahullah, he was executed, by the Italians. So he mentioned all of this in his book. He translated, and then he moved when he got some issues with King Abdulaziz. He moved to India. Muhammad Iqbal called him to India, and at that time was the idea of establishing Pakistan. It started with Muhammad Iqbal and with Mawdudi and all these, and Muhammad Iqbal, he thought that Muhammad Asad can contribute to this. So he moved to India, and he started working with some Indian scholars. One of them is Sheikh Abu al-Mawdudi, rahimahullah. He didn't get well with Sheikh al-Mawdudi. Again, that's a different story. And he did a lot. He wrote the first constitution of Pakistan. So the Pakistani government, they appreciated what he did for them. So they appointed him as the first Pakistani ambassador in the United Nations. And he was the first Pakistani ambassador in the United Nations. And then in New York, where he actually wrote his book, The Road to Mecca. Then, when he met his wife and he got married, and the Pakistanis actually were very upset why he didn't get permission from us, and he was also upset. He resigned. Anyway, that's a long story. And then he dedicated himself to the translation of the Quran. He did a great translation. However, some of his opinions were quite, again, not compatible with mainstream Sunni, but because he was eloquent in more than 14 languages. He could actually speak Hebrew, Aramaic, and the Yiddish, which is one of the oldest languages of the Jewish community. He speaks Urdu, Farsi, of course, another 8 European languages. So he was well equipped with languages to come up with a good translation, and he named his translation the message. The message is quite big translation, full of footnotes. And then, well, he was well accepted all over the English speaking world. And before him was actually the English Muhammad Picton. He also translated the Quran. And Picton, his translation is very good, accessible. Why? Because he himself also a novelist. So his ability to master the English language it's amazing, because he used to, he published 2 novels before he accepted Islam. And he did a lot for the Muslim community here. Again, well received. Then the 70s witnessed the complex of King Fahd, where they asked Muhammad Muhsin Khan, a Pakistani scholar, and Muhammad Taqili, the Hilali, Moroccan, to make a new translation. And this is dominated also during the 80s, most of the Muslim institution here in the West, because it was distributed free by the Saudi government. And if you go to the Hajj, that's the main one, in different copies. And again, it was full of footnotes. So some Old English and footnotes. So, but it was good, and they relied much on these. And then to 2000, we do also witness some of the new translation, but one of the most famous translation that has been accepted all over the world because of its plain English and the style of the translation, and also because the translator who translated this was a well-known scholar in Arabic as well as the English language. And he is the Professor Abdul Halim, so Halim, H-A-L-E-M, W-E-M, Halim. And he's published by Oxford University Press. Then we witnessed recently the Ahl al-Bayt and other English translations. So that's made, and I think one of the good selling translations during the last 2 decades. It's this translation of Abdul Halim, Muhammad Abdul Halim. He has been teaching here at the University of London since 1956. He's a scholar of Arabic and scholar of the Quranic studies. He published extensively on the Quran, and he refuted all these Western scholarship. So that's very, very briefly about the translation. We don't want to, since we are in British and English speaking, we don't want to talk about French translations, Spanish translation, many, maybe some of you, your own language, some community languages, to have translation. As we said earlier, according to this Turkish study, so we're talking about nearly over 2,000 translations done for the last 4 centuries. The translation itself, as we said, is tafsir, is interpretation. Because before you translate, you need to go over the tafsirs first. So, and this is not an easy task. I remember I met one of the French who translated the Quran, and he was telling me that for every single ayah, he used to check 80 tafsirs. 80 tafsirs. And he finished his project in 22 years. This is quite unique. He wasn't actually Muslim, and his ritual also, it was, because he was a scholar in Arabic studies and he knew about al-Bukhari, he actually imitated al-Bukhari, rahimahullah. In every single surah, before he starts translating the surah, he would make wudu first, although he wasn't Muslim. So, his name Jack Berg. He would make wudu first and wear a Moroccan qamis, jallabiya, and finish. And if he breaks wudu, he stopped writing, going to renew his wudu, and back again to the translation. It's one of the beautiful translations in French, by the way, Jacques Berg. Yeah. So he said that in every single ayah, that's his ritual, check 80 tafsirs. And that's not at the age of Google, where you ask Sheikh Google and you can bring all this. No. 80, he brought actually 80 tafsirs. And some of them were manuscripts, not edited. It was still handwritten. So he managed to get them from different places in the Muslim world. And he used to check 80 tafsirs. And then he would choose the most suitable word in French according to his. So in the end, he was doing tafsir. He was doing tafsir. So the translation is a tafsir. We need to understand this. Translation is a tafsir. So you take one of these. It's like إن الذين كذبوا بآياتنا واستكبروا عنها لا تفتح لهم أبواب السماء ولا يدخلون الجنة حتى يلج الجمل في سم الخياط. You see the needle, the metaphor here is, some of them they said, these believers, they do not enter al-Jannah, they do not get into the Jannah until al-Jamal, the camel, getting inside the needle. Our scholars differ on this al-Jamal. Is this al-Jamal the camel, or it is the rope? Which is, again, you cannot get this thick rope inside the needle. You cannot. Impossible. So here, as a translator, you have to go with whether you translate this as حتى يلج الجمل, and we can see maybe here let me see here, one example which is quite good, how they translate this, and we finish with this. So the verse here, let me just add different, referring to the English itself. So we're looking for 3 or 4 different tafsir, translations. And we come to this. إن الذين كذبوا بآياتنا واستكبروا عنها لا تفتح لهم أبواب السماء ولا يدخلون الجنة حتى يلج الجمل في سم الخياط. So the first one, we look at the translation of Mustafa Khattab, one of the recent translations called the Clear Quran. Yeah? So how he translated is حتى يلج الجمل في سم الخياط. Surely those who receive our revelations with denial and arrogance, the gate of heaven will not be opened for them, nor will they enter paradise until a camel. Now al-jamal, he chose a camel. A camel passes through the eye of a needle. Now that's Mustafa Khattab. The Muhammad Taqi Usmani, the great Mufti in India and Pakistan, he said they shall not enter paradise unless a camel passes through the eye of a needle. So he chose also the camel. We come to Abdul Halim. Abdul Halim, he said, he chose actually, even if the thick rope were to pass through the eye of a needle. So he didn't actually choose the jamal as a camel, but he said the thick rope. So that's still, you see, they choose the translation of al-jamal as a camel, and one of them choose the rope. Mamadou Pixel, I think the same. He choose the rope. So the translation itself is a tafsir, and the translator, he is a mufassir, taking what he thinks is right according to his knowledge. I think we stop here. If you have any questions, otherwise we will deal with that. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد ان لا اله الا انت نستغفرك ونتوب اليك سبحان ربك رب العزه عما يصفون سلام على المرسلين والحمد لله